Welcome, everyone. It's nice to be here. Nice to be here. So just a couple of quick announcements, if I can find them. I'm in the midst of planning another retreat, hopefully for this coming summer, 2020. It'll be again in San Diego. So stay tuned for details about that. If you're not on the newsletter, please sign up to the newsletter, which just go to the website and you'll find it there. Okay. Secondly, just a big thank you to everyone offering donations and ongoing support. That is truly helpful, keeping these broadcasts free and open to everyone. So truly, thank you. Thank you. I thought we might just spend a couple minutes here just closing our eyes and going inward. Reconnecting with the depth of our being. The direct experience of what we are, of what Nisargadatta called the presence of I am. This quiet aliveness. The Buddha called awareness. And so if you unhook from the thinking mind, the busyness of life, what's here right now that is awake, that is aware, that is alive, beyond the movement of mind, beyond the movement of the character? What's here that is simple and pure and free? The most important thing on the spiritual path is that we directly experience ourself, our consciousness. This fundamental aliveness. And so please breathe a little bit more deeply and open your heart and feel the goodness of your heart, the tenderness of your heart, the love of your heart, and this quiet, radiant, humble presence of love. So I am awareness. I am love. So feeling that which is awake, that which is aware, that which is tender and compassionate and innocent, and innately loving, innately loving. If you take a couple more deeper and fuller breaths, into the belly, and just noticing this quiet strength in the belly. There is something here which has outlived all human experience, all pain, all confusion. Just getting to know this strength, this quiet, profound strength, which has outlived every good day, every bad day, every ugly day. This quiet strength, which is indestructible. So I am awake and aware. I am loving, compassionate. I am indestructible. Indestructible light. I am that I am. And so I encourage you to stay with your experience, to breathe, to feel, to relax, let go. If there's anything here that you're struggling with, bring it forward into this light of clarity, this light of love, this light of strength. Just bring it forward. Surrender it to that which is free, that which is loving, that which is awake. And you can just continue to breathe and smile. You know, I once met with a teacher, and he said, if you simply realize that you are not your thoughts, if you simply realize that what you are is that which sees the ego, you are awake. You're awake. And so, you know, according to him, just cross that check. You know, check that box. You know, you say, I am awake. Live from your awakened consciousness. It's a great challenge. A great challenge just to live the awakened consciousness, just to admit, I know I'm not my ego. I know I'm not my mind. I know I am the love in my heart. I know I'm the consciousness that sees, that witnesses. I know I am this quiet strength. And so can you live this to the best of your ability? Can you live it? And if you find yourself lost again, just take a deep breath, unhook from that which you're confused by, and step back into your truth, step back into your light. I thought this evening I'd start off with a, excuse me, a little bit of a funny story, a humble story. Yesterday, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the hockey team, was playing the North Carolina Hurricanes. And in the first little bit of the game, the Hurricanes goalie, he got injured. And so they brought up the backup goalie. And he played for a little bit. And then all of a sudden, he got injured too. And in a professional hockey team, normally they have two pro goalies, like one the starter and one's the backup. And so here they were, all of a sudden without a goalie, and they weren't sure what to do. And they were in Toronto at the Maple Leafs home turf, and Zamboni driver, that's the guy who makes the ice all flat, if you don't know what a Zamboni driver is, this 42-year-old fella. He played hockey, you know, most his life, like any good Canadian. And he said, well, you know, I can be a goalie. And so he stepped in for the, the opposing team, the North Carolina Hurricanes. So he was the Zamboni driver for the Maple Leafs, and he said, well, I could help out. I'll be the emergency goaltender. His name was David Ayers. And so he stepped in, and right away, the Maple Leafs scored 2 goals on him. He's not a professional goaltender. He's the guy who drives the Zamboni. But here he was really excited to have his first professional game as a goalie, just out of nowhere. And he was really nervous, and he got scored twice, right away. And they were really good shots. They probably weren't going to be blocked by a professional goaltender. And one of the North Carolina guys came up to him and said, hey, look, don't worry about it. This is your first time playing pro hockey. Just enjoy yourself out here, okay? And kind of gave him a pat on the back. And so he took a deep breath. His nervousness began to calm down. And then he didn't let another goal go by for the rest of the evening. North Carolina went on to win the game. And this guy was, I think he's now the oldest starter, the oldest, debut professional hockey player, to win a game, as a goalie. And so it was really sweet to hear this story. And North Carolina said they're going to make him a jersey, and then they're going to sell the jersey and give a lot of the proceeds to a nonprofit, because he was a kidney transplant recipient, this fella who was a Zamboni driver. It's just such a beautiful story, and the guy was literally just about in tears, how happy he was to go from the Zamboni driver for the night and, like a kid's hockey coach, to playing pro hockey and winning his first game. It's probably his first and only game. And last week and during the retreat, I've been speaking a lot about you showing up, you claiming your truth, and you showing up and sharing your truth, living your truth. And, a couple fellows on the retreat were, acting like, well, I'd like to do that, but I don't feel like I'm qualified. I don't feel like I'm ready yet. We're never ready to serve the truth. Never ready. But what God wants us to do is just to step into the role. And when you step into this role of serving the truth, in whatever way that is, whatever way, whether it's being a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, good Samaritan, helping someone on the side of the road, being a good friend. Hell, sometimes it's even counseling a friend at a bar, We're never ready for this, and we normally mess it up in the beginning, just like this fella David is. He let 2 goals go by right away. As soon as he stepped on that ice, they scored on him twice. And that's kind of how it is on the path. We learn through failure. But if we're unwilling to fail, we'll never do any good in this world. We'll never do any good. If this fella, if he just walked away crying after 2 goals were scored on him, it would have been too bad. His light couldn't have fully shined. But he took some deep breaths, his new teammates, gave him a pat on the back, and it told him, it's okay. It's okay. And God wants you to know this, that it's okay. You are expected to fail in an evolutionary world. We fail in the beginning, but in the end, we're victorious. But you have to be courageous enough to fail. You have to be courageous enough to make a fool out of yourself. You have to be courageous enough. Pretty much everywhere Jesus went, he was ridiculed, literally. People harassed him so much. The Buddha, he walked into a town once and someone spit in his face. But what if the Buddha never taught? What if Jesus never taught? What if, our mothers and fathers never taught us how to be kind, or our kindergarten teacher never taught us how to share? What if our older brother never taught us how to drive a car? We have to fail. We have to be comfortable with failure if you're going to share your heart here on planet Earth. It's through failing and then looking again with discernment, regrouping, taking a deep breath, and then trying again. It's with humility that we discover, how to truly give of ourselves. But if we go in with the attitude that that I'm perfect, that I am the awakened one, I know everything, boy, then we're going to crash and burn real bad. And our partner, our sisters and brothers, our parents are going to tell us we stink. We've all met non-dual people on the path who they're know-it-alls. They think they know everything. It's quite unfortunate when people think they know everything and they begin to open their mouth and share. It's best when we acknowledge, hey, I'm new at this. I'm just trying. And we ask God for help. We ask the intelligence of the universe to speak through us. We ask for this higher truth to come down and speak through us. And so this is the invitation. This takes great humility. Great humility. The beautiful thing about this Zamboni driver, he was the Zamboni driver for the Maple Leafs, but the crowd, and they were out at the Maple Leafs stadium, and the crowd, the Maple Leafs crowd, was cheering him on. They gave him a standing ovation when he won the game, even though their team had lost, because he was a Maple Leaf. He was a Canadian, and they thought he did great. See, this is humility. People love it when you share your heart. They love it. In the beginning, oftentimes, we're challenged. But in the end, if we share our hearts with humility and show up and do our best, people are truly touched. Truly touched. And God made each and every one of your hearts. Gave you each a unique gift. And you're obligated, literally obligated, to serve your brothers and sisters, to share your truth. One of the most arrogant things we can do on this path is make ourselves small. When you make yourself small, basically you align with your insecure ego, and you look at God and you say, no, it's not true. I'm not made in the image and likeness of you. Your creation is no good. It's just a small, petty little thing. I am worthless. When we look at God and say that is completely arrogant, God gave you a beautiful heart, a clear mind, a radiant presence. And when you share that presence with the world, it is one of the most humble things you can do, the most courageous things you can do. And again, the most arrogant thing you can do is deny your truth, deny your divinity. You stand completely apart from God when you deny your truth. But if you're willing to open your heart and say, yes, I am that. I am good. God is good. This is good. God's creation is good. Life is good. Then something greater can come here on planet Earth. Something greater. Okay, so I have lots of questions here. Let me see if anything popped up in the chat. Yeah, Richard, you have a question. Yes, I'll give the mic to you. And Richard, just be concise with your question. So I have a bunch of others from email, but please, I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I usually am really concise with my questions. Today is a question that requires a little more of a
It's
feeling presence?
totally fine. No problem at all.
Yeah, thank you. So this is deep in me right now, and it has to do with, I had a very difficult day today, and that's okay, because I'm blessed and I was able to hold it. But I am wanting to hear about what it means to be a very awake being, but still experience and be humbled by physical pain, by difficult states of mind that come forward, and to just be crushed by life. And so let me just preface it a little more. I've never heard about Buddha weeping, but I have heard about Jesus weeping. And for me, there's just something there, the utter heartbrokenness. And then the final thing I want to say is this, is that I live in the Denver area, and within, 100-mile span of me, there's no doubt that there's people being pimped out, there are snuff films being made, people being taken advantage of sexually, right? Just the utter devastation that exists here in this world. And I would just really love to hear you speak to that from the depths of a tender, broken heart. There we go. Thank you.
Boy, Richard, what a beautiful question. Thank you for bringing this. And one of the things that I like to focus on in my teaching is destroying some of the myths about what it means to be awake. And people have this idea that if we are awake, we no longer feel pain. But I'm going to give everyone some bad news if you think, if that's your highest truth. To be awake means you feel everything 100, if not 1,000 times more. You feel it so much more. You experience it so much more. And it hurts. Life hurts here on planet Earth. If we think that life doesn't hurt, well, we're thinking. We're in our heads. If we're in our hearts, which are awake and are essentially feeling instruments and compassion instruments, the nature of the heart is to feel. And so when you see suffering, you cry. I mean, I literally cry almost every day of the week. So I want to be clear about myself. And sometimes I have no idea what I'm crying for. I'll just be overwhelmed by the heaviness of life, the difficulty of life, the pain of life, the suffering of life. You should expect that the further and further you walk, the more and more you will feel. It's just a basic math. To live in oneness is to live in oneness with everything. The spiritual myth is to live in oneness means I feel spacious, I feel blissful, I feel free. That's what, the spiritual definition, or an immature spiritual definition of oneness is. Oneness also includes, the bad and the ugly, the difficult, the pain, the suffering, the genocide, the violence, the heartache. And the Dalai Lama is a great example of this. He says he laughs and cries equal amounts every day. He sits with the refugees of his country. His country's been literally destroyed, pillaged, genocide. And so you should expect to feel. But in order not to be lost in feeling, we have to have the other two awakenings to balance it. The clear mind, which just sees. Let's start with this chakra center. What the Buddha may call awareness. If we allow awareness to be mixed with intelligence, we see that we live in an evolutionary world. And in an evolutionary world, Humankind is literally evolving out of animal kind into a rational being. In theory, it's hard to find any truth to that in this day and age, but so we're evolving out of a animal being into a rational being, and then eventually out of a rational being into a divine being. And so you're going to find evolutionary beings who, like you said, are causing great suffering for your other brothers and sisters here on planet Earth. I mean, there's people who kidnap children and enslave children right now. There's more slaves on planet Earth now than there ever have been. That's crazy. That's crazy. It breaks your heart. It breaks my heart when I hear this, when I know this. And so the clarity is saying, okay, this is what's happening here on planet Earth. I see it clearly. I see the pain, but I also see the beauty, the goodness, the potential. I see in theory where we're headed. I see with clarity that there is room for it all, for evolution to unfold in its own time. Now that's different than ego's time. Ego's time says, I want this evolution to happen already. I want us to be in heaven already. But we're not. God created an animal world and is inviting the animals to evolve into divine beings. That's where we live. And it's painful. It's painful when you include the heart in this realization. It is ridiculously painful and ridiculously beautiful, like with the story I just told about this 42-year-old fella who, was driving a Zamboni, and all of a sudden his dream was realized of playing professional hockey, even just for one night. I look into my child's eyes and I just see such overwhelming beauty and goodness. I mean, there were times when I would send my teenage daughter to school and there were so many school shootings going on. I was like, my God, is this the last time I'm going to see her? To break my heart, rip my heart apart. I've sat with teachers literally in my office who 2 hours ago, at the time of the appointment, 2 hours previously, they had a school shooter in their school. It's like, what is going on this planet? Like young children are shooting each other. It's crazy. And it breaks your heart. So I cry. I grieve with him. I don't just say, it is what it is. I don't say that silly Buddhist thing to him. It is what it is. And Buddha would never say such a thing. Never say such a thing. And when you bring this third realization, the realization in the belly, you begin to see in a much deeper way, a profound way, everyone's soul. And you see that this too shall pass, and not only this too shall pass, that these beings are divine. They're angels. The prostitute and the pimp, the abuser and the victim, they're all angels, literally, in a confused human body. But when you begin to see this, there's a quiet strength, there's a quiet nobility, a quiet okayness in life that is ridiculously paradoxical. Ridiculously paradoxical. And the beautiful thing about this paradox is when you truly step into it, you don't look out at life and say, it is what it is. When you feel the paradox of life, that life is completely beautiful and absolutely burning to the ground at the same time. You do not respond with, it is what it is. You open-heartedly grieve. Because from a human perspective, you are so okay. You're so strong that you're willing to feel the pain that others can't. And you can't stop yourself from grieving. You can't stop yourself from crying. The tears just flow because that's the natural expression of having a human heart. And so you don't get into some cold place where you don't feel like a stone Buddha. Rather, you come into a radically open-hearted place where you feel life and you let it rip you apart. You let it crush you. And then you pick yourself up off the floor and you look at yourself. I often look at my body and say, oh, this thing did not crush me. It did not crush me. It felt like it was crushing me. It felt like it was ripping me apart. But it didn't. My awareness, I am that I am. My heart, I am that love that I am. I am that strength that I am. Was not destroyed. This innocence was not destroyed. This innocence actually comes more fully forward with radical strength, and it's not afraid to feel. You know, Richard, I've had so many folks in my office, and they come in and they've had this great pain on their mind, great sadness. And because of the repressive quality of their ego and how they trained themselves not to feel, oftentimes I would grieve for them, literally. They wouldn't cry, but I would start crying. And through me, beginning to release their pain, oftentimes they would join me in the letting go. Join me in the letting go. And this is one of the great gifts we can give the world, is if you choose to live with a tender heart, it's healing for your brothers and sisters. If you choose to live with a jaded heart or armor, it just adds to the plane of the pain of the collective consciousness, which says, I'm not big enough to feel this, it's too much. And so the ego is always afraid of too much, of being crushed. And it's a good practice to let the ego be overwhelmed, to let it be crushed, and discover, oh, this heart of mine was not crushed by life. It cannot be crushed. And oftentimes we have to go through this doorway again and again and again. Many people have this myth that, myself included, I had this, by the way, if I just sit in meditation, long enough, on the perfect day, at the perfect moment, I would achieve the supreme enlightenment. It's hogwash. Enlightenment comes through a willingness to feel and embrace everything. It normally comes on our darkest day, not our brightest. It normally comes on our darkest day. Now, God oftentimes gives us a flash of something beautiful on the brightest days, but in order to truly step into liberation, you have to be crushed by life and realize this innocence that I am was not destroyed. It wasn't. It was not destroyed. This innocence that I am can continue to love my brothers and sisters. And sometimes we love people intimately, closely. Other times we just send prayers in their direction. We see them and we send love in their direction. But let me assure you, if any of you are being courageous enough to feel, to open, to experience, you're already breaking down the wheel of samsara. You're breaking down old evolutionary habits, not just for yourself, but for the entirety of the planet. And this is why so many people are waking up now. It's because so many before us broke down many of those walls and said, yeah, it's okay. It's okay to feel. It's okay to open. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to surrender. It's okay to let go. It's okay to not trust the human mind. It's okay not to be jaded. Jaded is one of those things that it's like a disease now on planet Earth. There's so many people who've taken on being jaded. But we cannot do that. Because we know there's a greater way. A way that is tender, that is open, that is raw, that's profoundly deep and free. Now, I always had this inquiry, this contemplation I would sit with. Well, what does it mean to be free on my worst day? If I'm in immense physical suffering, can I see the pain, feel the pain, surrender the pain, acknowledge the pain? And keep in mind, I'm not someone who's a stranger to pain. I live with a head injury. I deal with pain on a daily basis, my pain, and the people I meet with. Like, I live with chronic pain, ridiculous amounts of pain. It breaks my heart. And this week, I had the flu, and I got the flu, and then I almost got better. And then today I woke up, and my Lord, I got crazy sick again. And sometimes I look at God and I cry, I say, Lord, please, please, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. And yet, simultaneously, I know this too shall pass, and I'm completely and totally okay. It's a bizarre thing being awake. It's a bizarre thing being human. It's a bizarre thing to experience so much pain, suffering in this world. But can you open your heart? Can you feel it? Can you surrender it? Can you love it? And can you take a deep breath and do your best to respond to life with love, despite it? Despite it. And this is the great challenge. So many spiritual people are wet noodles, and they just, or they're like, bliss bunnies. They just want to feel good. And, what's different than that? And people who just chase, doing drugs or alcohol or whatever. We just want to feel good all the time. That's not freedom. Freedom means we are awake to love. No matter what our experience is, good, bad, ugly. Freedom is not how we feel. Freedom is what we are. What we are, fundamentally. That we are connected to a presence that is beyond feeling. If everything is simply about feeling, that's called egoic consciousness. Now, some spiritual states feel really good. But can we be awake and can we be free? Like what Richard is speaking about on one of our worst days ever. Do you know who you are? What your life is about? And are you doing your best to respond with love, with truth, and with freedom? This is what it means to be awake. And sometimes life crushes us again and again and again. And the great realization in that is that it didn't actually kill me. And the people in the streets who you see that are suffering, you'll see them in heaven, and you'll see that this world didn't kill them either. My father, who was one of the individuals in my life who lived with just unimaginable suffering. I mean, he was an orphan. He was ridiculously abused. He joined the army at 16, and that was his way out, and just struggled with alcohol and pain and trauma for the entirety of his life. When I saw him on the other side, I couldn't believe what a bright light he was. What an angelic presence. I had no idea he was so beautiful. In his human form, he looked like he was so beat up, so beat down, so lived in such utter suffering. When I saw him on the other side, my heart was crushed a different way. It was crushed by his brilliance, by his beauty, by his immensity. And then I really realized I don't know what's happening here on planet Earth. You know, we think one thing is happening, but every being you see, even if they're in untold of suffering, even if they experience genocide, that being is literally an angel. And will find their way to heaven. Will find their way. And so, let me switch gears and get into some of the other questions. Thank you, Richard, for sharing your heart. That was really beautiful. One of the things that I found is with this world, no spiritual explanation could make it right. When I look at the suffering of the planet, no philosophy, no theory, not even, all the things I just said there, even about evolution and this and that. When you begin to see your innate indestructibility and you wake up to that and you begin to see it in your brothers and sisters, because awakening is not a personal thing. Most people think that awakening is a personal thing, but when you see that your light is indestructible, your innocence, you start to see it everywhere in everyone. And you have complete and total faith in them to outlive whatever hell that they're in, even if they don't outlive it in a human way, if that makes sense. So, okay. Here's another one. Craig, thank you for helping me understand and embrace my extreme vulnerability, sensitivity with discernment. Thank you. Our hearts are being broken every day, and we need to see the truth. But there is a truth in love and compassion too. Yeah. The ego thinks of the heart as being broken, but in reality, the heart simply gets broken open. And then we're not guarded anymore. We're not wearing armor anymore. And you have to be courageous. At first, it's shocking. It's like, oh my Lord, I'm feeling so much. And you're crying all the time. When my heart first opened up, all I did was cry and cry and cry. But then the further you walk, as the strength comes forward, it gets balanced out. But I still cry almost every day. Okay, here's a question from Kyle. Craig, I'm curious about your experience with Christ consciousness. When you began to see it, did you encounter the soul of Jesus? If so, did you begin a relationship with him? Thanks and peace to you. Yeah, let's talk about two things here, Kyle. So there is Jesus, the ascended master, the one who lived on planet Earth but then became an ascended master, who brought the Christ. He was a manifestation of the Christ consciousness. Great example, living example of Christ consciousness. And then there's Christ consciousness in everything. Christ consciousness is the fundamental aliveness, the heart, the intelligence of life. And it's literally the fabric in everyone and everything. So his question is about, Craig, I'm curious about your experience with Christ consciousness. When you began to see it. I saw this as a little kid. I can remember just looking up out at the stars and feeling the love of Christ, the Christ itself, in the dark, deep space of sky and the radiance of the stars. And there was something that I used to do. I used to just go out at night. We lived in the country as a little boy. And I'd just go out and I would just lay down on my driveway, the warm pavement. And, in the Midwest, there's all these bugs and they make one giant collective ohm sound at night. If you ever lived in the South or the Midwest, especially and you're out in the country, there's so much sound from the insects that it makes this giant hum. And so I'd hear this immense hum, just radiant life. Look out at the huge, vast, immense sky. And I would talk to God. I'd talk to Jesus. I'd talk to Mary. I just talk, and just feel overwhelmed by love. And I did this every night, from being a little kid. And then, if I ever got in a tight spot, I'd call out to Jesus and ask for support. And, oftentimes the personal Jesus would come, the ascended master. The most frightening time was when I was in Guatemala. I went down there and I was actually on this trip. It was a really wild trip, a brutal trip, talking about the rawness of life, but literally visiting and witnessing mass grave sites where the Guatemalan people, the Nicaraguan people, the Honduran people, where there were mass graves, from the late 80s, early 90s. And, where there was death squads and, oftentimes trained by our government and our military, unfortunately, funded by. And I would visit these grave sites and where there'd be, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 women and children killed. Talking about heart-wrenching. It just broke my heart to see this. Your mind, your human egoic heart doesn't even know what to do with this. And yet at the same time, I would feel the love of Christ there. I'd feel the faith in the people's, in their hearts. They had such humility and such love for Jesus. And one day I ate something I probably shouldn't have, or drank something I shouldn't have. And I got really sick on the side of this volcano in Guatemala. I was way out in the jungle and away from a doctor. And I got a really high fever and I just started to, stuff was just coming out of me. And it got to the point literally where I thought I was going to die. Like it was that bad. And I called out to Jesus for hours and he showed up, literally sat on my bed with two others. And I thought, oh, now I'm really dead because he's coming to get me. but here I am, here I am. So he stayed and just flooded my heart with love. It was funny, love and bliss while I had like a, ridiculously high temperature and burning up on the side of the mountain. Eventually my friends came and got me and, carried me far away to a doctor, and a couple of days later was able to heal. So I've always had a great connection with Jesus and a great connection with the Christ. And I like to acknowledge those two as separate and one and the same. People like to think of Christ as Jesus's last name, but the Christ is in all of us. It's the energy of your heart. When it was said that you are made in the image and likeness of God, yeah, that's the truth right there. You are the Christ. Can you realize this fundamental aliveness? And so more and more on this path, the further I walk, the more deeper the more fully, I experience this Christ consciousness. And it's immense, it's vast, it's cosmic, it's timeless, it's eternal. And it's available to all of us because it is our nature. Okay, so I better hurry up here because there's a lot of questions here. This one's from Justina. She writes, Craig, in our last session, you said the world is here to serve you, not the other way around. I was wondering what you meant by this. Yeah. So, the traditional teaching is that you are here to serve the world, which is absolutely true. You're here to serve God and in the form of your human brothers and sisters and all the other plants and animals and species here on this planet and the earth itself. You are here to serve them, but they are here to serve you as well. And one of the things that you begin to see as you wake up is you begin to see that there is this supreme intelligence that is literally serving you, giving you what you need, holding you when you need to be held, backing off when you need a little bit of space, breaking your heart when your human egoic heart needs to be broken, crushing you when you need to be crushed. This is one of the greatest realizations, is when you wake up and see that life is eternally talking to you, speaking to you. And I'm not just talking about little synchronicities. If you step back far enough and look at life, you will begin to see that life is serving you. The fact that you are here right now listening, this is life serving you. You have a desire in your heart for the Dharma, and here the Dharma is being served on a platter to you. You don't even have to leave your house to receive it. When I was young, I had to go, drive and visit my teacher. I had to drive 20 minutes. Sometimes I had to drive an hour through a snowstorm. And then, get out a snowblower and plow the way, up to the temple to see my teacher. It would take me a couple hours just to go see him and then sit with him and meditate with him, and here. But like with my teacher, he was dropped in my lap literally, and he served me. That's all he did, was serve me. Of course, I thought I was serving him. But now when I look back, I see, oh no, he was serving me. He was serving me. Not only did I get to receive the teachings from him, he literally paid me. I worked for him. Talk about being set up in such a beautiful way. But time and time again, if you step back far enough and you look at life, life is here to serve you. Life is the supreme intelligence and beauty of life. Is here to take good care of you. Okay. So I hope that is clear, and let that in. Let that in and see, because the ego has this grand idea that it's me against life. I'm an eternal victim. But God is saying the opposite. God is saying, look, I prepared a table for you. Come and join, eat from the table, eat from my hands. Take what is given here. I'm giving you something incredible. Receive it. Don't squander it. Step into your heart and come sit at the table. Come sit at the table. Your heart, the Buddha's heart, one heart. Your heart, Christ's heart, one heart. Take ownership of that. Step into it. This is my great challenge to you. Okay. I'm going to hurry up here because there's a couple more questions. From Jay, I've experiencing going through a long period of energetic rewiring and processing old energies. I have periods of very low energy where it's hard to get out of bed, where I need to lie down frequently and gather energy to simply be able to take a shower. I've been using caffeine to help, but that has started to cause its own issue with my belly. Do you have any suggestions? Yeah. Jay, two things. One, call upon God. Call upon God to come into you and to do the work for you. Call upon grace. Say, Lord, come into me, hold me. I can't do this. I am exhausted. And lay in bed and let God lift the karma from you, the pain, the confusion. So come into a very humble place inside and ask for support. Ask for support. I do this every day of my life. I ask God, come into me, do the work for me, speak through me, act through me, live through me, love through me. And so I encourage you, Jay, join me in this prayer. It's an ongoing prayer. That means you must unhook from your mind. The ego can get identified with processing. And so make sure you're not identified with processing. And make sure you're not identified with resistance. Oftentimes when we have very low energy, it's because there's a great resistance or shadow in our consciousness. So look for that and see if there's resistance here, what the resistance is, what it's about, where it's at. Why am I resisting? We all have resistance, so don't take that too personally. And the other thing is, make sure, this will be the third thing, make sure you're taking good care of your of your body. B12, B vitamins are great if you are having really low energy. And one of the great things I do is, so having a great whole foods diet. Caffeine is, terrible for your nervous system, so don't do that. But, one of the great things I do is I just lay with a hand on my heart and a hand on my belly and just breathe deeply. I breathe in, I love you, and I breathe out, and it's okay. And I do this for hours, when I was in the place that you're describing. So I did it for months. I did it for years. And then I began to feel this aliveness starting to give birth in my heart. And that aliveness came forward and led me forward. Okay. Here's a long question that someone wrote in, and I believe it's from Sarah. Let me see if I can get to the real meat of it here. Craig, I feel worthless when I think that I should rather live in an ashram for my whole life. I don't feel like my inner child will grow into a funny, healthy, happy adult, although in that life scenario. I don't know how to be in the world, and basically she doesn't know how to be in the world, and she's very sensitive, and she's thinking about living in an ashram. How should I decide? Living in an ashram is another one of those great myths. I've visited many ashrams, spiritual centers, and I'll tell you this. If you want to go visit and hang out with people who are psychologically confused, running from life, neurotic, some of the most terribly, I'm even going to use this word, deranged individuals that I've met on the path have been at ashrams, yoga centers, retreat centers. So please get rid of this illusion that if you go to an ashram, that you will be completely held and loved by everyone there. No one will bother you, and your food will be served on a platter. Now, ashrams are pressure cookers. And they oftentimes attract people who feel like they cannot or do not fit in to the regular, normal human world. And so they tend to be dumping grounds, the same way like alternative schools are dumping grounds for kids who don't fit in. And I say this from experience, not out of disrespect. I'm sure there's some ashrams that I've never seen one though, where people are psychologically sane, but I don't care if it's a monastery, a convent, an ashram, a yoga center, retreat center. Oftentimes they are just full of people who are hypersensitive, highly neurotic, completely lost in their egos, and who are running from life. And so, if anything, if you feel like your inner child needs to grow, get yourself in a good, safe place, safe living situation, and just gently, slowly come into the world. Gently, slowly come into the world. Sorry to burst anyone's bubble about going to an ashram, but you're always welcome to go visit, and you're always welcome to do a little bit of retreat time and see what is the reality of ashram life. Oftentimes ashrams are full of not only, I'm just going to use this word to be blunt, crazy people. They're also full of people who have big, fat spiritual super egos, and there's always the person there who's the rule enforcer and the Dharma police and the Nondual police, and they're very uncomfortable places to be. Your best bet is to have your own place where you're connected to a spiritual community that you love and you respect, and that is adult and is mature and is integrated. So if you do go to an ashram, try to find one that is deeply integrated, or else you'll find that they won't have what you need. Okay, I think that's about all the questions that I could get to. I apologize if I missed some. Please bring them next week, and I'll do my best to get to those next week. So my heart's with you all, and truly, everyone have a great night. Yeah, bye for now.